Hello, and welcome everyone to The Hustle Code. The Hustle Code is a series of curated talks with some of the most persistent founders and investors in the startup ecosystem. Here we try to decode the what, why, and how of their journeys. Through these stories, we wish to embrace the spirit of hustle. So brace yourselves for a gripping and an insightful dialogue. Welcome everyone. I'm Tushar, your host for today. Today we have Sandeep Senan with us. He is an innovator, technologist, and the founder of Buybox, which is a startup enabling innovation among young kids. Sandeep, pleasure to have you on the show.
Pleasure to be here, Tushar.
Sandeep, can you take us through your early interest into innovation, teaching, and particularly what led you to start Buybox?
Sure, Tushar. So I think it started quite early when I was a kid. I distinctly remember, I think I should be around 5, 6 years of age, and had a neighbor of mine who had an electrical shop. And I used to pay a visit to him, and he used to encourage, give me small motors, small bulbs, and all. And that's my journey of how I started tinkering with stuff. And this passion continued, and then somewhere when the cable era came in and I started to watch one of those Star Wars movies and got fascinated with the concept of robots doing a lot of stuff. And then fast forward, by the time I finished my graduation in computer science, I had done quite a lot of projects. And then what I also did was I played a lot with hardware because of my childhood skills. So I used to marry both the worlds of hardware and software quite well. And that is where the bug of what you call as innovation bit me. And for me, always like if you're making something, you take inspiration, but you build upon it, you add your flavor. This was something which always was part of my DNA, whichever way you would call it. There are multiple instances, even in college time, in school time, where whatever I used to do, I think I used to bring in a flavor of some amount of creativity. I don't know where I got it from, but I think it was always there. Like even if I am doing a small bot, I would try to see that there is something distinct in that all the time. So I think that is where it caught in. And then after I finished engineering, I happened to meet, I came to Bangalore, I meet Dr. Sridhar Mitta, who is the first person to introduce me to the concept of entrepreneurship. And I was introduced to the Indus Entrepreneurs Bangalore chapter here. And I started visiting a lot of these sessions where entrepreneurs come and talk about it, where we had angel investors, venture capital coming and talking about it. And this is where I was part of Open Coffee Club meets in Bangalore. So initially it was just watching, seeing what others are doing, being part of discussions, all that part of it. But somewhere I was also part of Times of India's newspaper in education initiative. And I started going to schools and this was quite unique in the sense that whenever I go into a classroom, talk about some part of technology, kids used to get excited and they used to say, Saturday, sir, I will come to your home. Can you teach me this? Can you help me make all this? And I used to behave like a typical adult and say, no, you study well, maybe become an engineer or a scientist, and then you can make all this. And the kids used to make this sad face. I have to wait for another 20 or 10 years to basically become all this made me think, saying that I started very early, but why am I actually behaving and telling them almost like how my parents used to tell, why are you making all this? Focus on your studies now, and then you can make all these things later. And this is where I thought that maybe kids have all these ideas. When I was doing these sessions, it was like quite exciting in the sense that whenever I used to give them a story of how future is going to be, they used to come back and say, so can we create this? Can we do that? All that part of it. And then, sir, I want to make this. How do I make that? And then I used to answer, or maybe on the board draw a small diagram and show this is how it can be made. I saw that these kids always have ideas. It's just that they really don't have, they're very curious. They don't have a platform to do this. And this is where the concept of Bbox started coming into my mind. I thought that why don't we actually create a platform where kids can come together and they try out stuff which they are passionate about. Of course, this was a
So, Sandeep,
yeah.
when was this happening? As in, which year was this?
So this was somewhere around 2008 9.
Okay.
So this is when it happened, and then I discussed this with one of my friend and said, he was actually my batchmate, who was my buddy in college, where we did a lot of this what do you call hobby projects. This was apart from all the engineering projects which we used to do. We used to do a lot of other hobby projects, and he was my partner for all that. So I used to discuss this with him and say, hey, there's this thing trend I am noticing in schools, and this kept happening in a few schools I went to. And we should do something about it. So he asked, "What do you have in mind?" I said, "Why don't we create a small tech platform which kids can come use?" And then internet was not that good at that point of time, so we were saying it will not work. And then we said, "Why don't we make a hardware platform where kids, if they have an idea, they can put it in an abstract form like a flow chart, and maybe then that get downloaded into an electronic brain, and then maybe they can connect it to. So why don't we demystify a lot of engineering which we used to do when we were in college?" So he said, "Why not?" And then it became another one of the outside the college project which we took up. And then I think we participated in a business plan competition which we came to know about, and we won the first prize. This was in IMB, and that is where this first prize was given by Educom. Educom was the biggest guy in education those days, right? So I met Shantanu, his team there. They had a look at what we are doing, and in fact, that is where the first instincts of saying that okay, maybe this should become a venture started becoming more serious of a thought. We met one of the scientists in DST. He said that they actually fund startups who are developing unique products, inbuilt holes, but we have to incorporate a company.
So that is when you incorporated, is it?
Correct. So till then we didn't really, because we had to take the money, so we became a private limited company, and
Got it.
so that
This happened when?
this was in 2012.
Got it. So in 2012, you started Bbox, and were you sure that entrepreneurship is something which you would like to pursue for a long time?
During college days, I hear a lot of juniors and even a few of my professors saying that you're not built for being an employee. You should actually start an enterprise. But honestly speaking, I didn't really knew what an enterprise was. So I know people ran business. I know people doing trade business, but nothing about entrepreneurship. So honestly, people used to say this, but I didn't know the meaning. But I think after I came to Bangalore and I started seeing part of the Open Coffee Club and the entrepreneurship forums is when it started daunting onto me what it really meant.
And so when you were building Bbox in the early days, right? Was there thought process? Should all kids study innovation? Am I building something which is going to be very, very niche?
Of course, I like dreaming. I think I was born in March, so I love dreaming. Then, if you look at it, the whole concept of saying that everyone should innovate is not something I fundamentally believe saying that curiosity is something which everyone has. Yes, it's get undershadowed. If you look at my own instance, say I kept on innovating, I kept building stuff till I was ninth grade. And then after that, my mom put a stop to it for 3 years, saying that those are very critical 3 years of your life. If you do your 10th well, and then if you do your 12th well, sab kuch like will be set in
So
your
all
life.
of us have sold the story,
Correct.
right?
The same story, right? So what happens is that all my these tinkering toys which I used to build till then was all thrown away, and I never really built anything for those 3 years. Absolutely zero stuff. And if you look at it, I think a lot of my creativity died, and it died during the first year of engineering, because the first year of engineering are also same drama. No, you have to now do well and then get into a job, all that part of it. Now, what really happened? There was a professor in my college whom I met in my second year of engineering, and he is the one who said that learning is one part, but doing what you're passionate about is a different part. So in our college we had something called as the information sharing forum, where a group of nerds, or what you call as people who are outside the typical academics, would used to come together and sit with and discuss about what they are building outside the syllabus. And this caught my fancy, and this is where things started coming back, and I started sharing I did this when I was small, all that part of it. And then they said, "Do you want to build something?" And one of the first innovations which I came out when I was in college was an haptic mouse. It's like your regular mouse, but what you could do is you could actually feel whenever you touch a computer generated object. So if it is a spring which is there, you touch the spring, you can feel the vibration on your mouse. So this was something they were trying to import. The college was trying to import, and Logitech had come out with this innovation in the US, but it was available only in the US. And there was someone coming from US, and this group in my college was trying to import the same. And I said, "Why don't we build it? Do you have to wait for 6 months for them to come and then get it?" And this is when the first time the professor noticed and say, "You can build it?" I said, "Yes." "When can you build it?" I said, "Tomorrow." So I went, opened up a mouse, put something, fixed it, came back the next day morning, early morning, 7:30 starting 7:30 a.m. in front of the staff room waiting for the professor. And I was quite shocked, saying that you said yesterday and here you are today. And then he called all the teachers together in the faculty room and said, "This guy from third semester has brought something, let's see." And I showed a demo, and they were like, "Oh, okay, this is good." So then the professor took me under his wing, and then we built on quite a lot of projects after that. So this is how it all started.
Understood. So, Sandeep, when one thinks about innovation, right, a general feeling is, even if I'm thinking about what you have built right now, is that it's not for me because I can't do it. It's very tough to do, right? And I'm sure you would have faced it when you were, dealing with children. How did you actually sort of convince them that this is something which they can do and it's not as tough as it seems from
So,
outside?
Tushar, I will share an instance of what really happened because, see, I really don't think what you said is actually true. But if
Hmm.
you look at it for me, when you ask what is innovation for me, I say primarily it's a mindset. So, if you have a mindset to say yes, I can innovate, you can definitely innovate. If you have a mindset saying that oh, it is tough, it is really tough. So, when we go to kids, right, they are in the formative years, they are curious. But what really happens is when teachers keep saying this is the way, abhi padhai karo. See, just like the way when they came to me, naturally I started saying no, padhai karo abhi. Because
Hmm.
then what really happens, we are killing away that curious mind which they have, in a sense saying that focus only on the marks part of it. So I think when we started going into the schools, and when I first stand in front of a group of 60 students and say, how many of you want to be innovators? Typically, one or two will raise their hands. And if it is a second tier or a third tier school, I haven't seen much of a response where they say they just sit there. And then I ask the next fundamental question because I am also curious, like, "Yeah, what is happening? Why is that you don't want to be innovators?" It's just that
Hmm.
they don't foresee that as a job. They say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a lawyer. Can't you be a lawyer and be an innovator? This is something which people don't think about. Then I actually show them examples of what kids are doing worldwide and what we had done in a previous session. And this takes,
Hmm.
let's say, 15 to 20 minutes. And after that, when I ask how many of you want to be innovators, you will see a vast majority of that 60 students raise their hands. So if you
Hmm.
look at it, it's a mental block which we have. And this is what we actually do during the initial sessions when we do the classroom. And this is what the teachers and the principals also saw us and started adopting, saying that, okay, we also really worked on the mindset of the kids before actually
Hmm.
teaching them the skill.
Understood. Interesting. So Sandeep, you were clear in 2012, 13, the segment you were in, the products that you were trying to build. But I'm sure when you started as an entrepreneur, it would have been a completely different experience, right?
True.
Because you just don't have to be an innovator, but you have to don several hats.
True.
So what was this early experience of, formative years of Buybox for you?
Tushar, yeah, I was quite immature the way I was at that point of time. But I think what kept me going was the sheer passion of wanting to do something. I think sometimes when you're passionate about something, right, I think you don't really think, but I think what you do is you have the sheer will and force through which you basically break away a lot of obstacles. Like, for example, initially when I started, I was good with people. I had a lot of juniors who knew me well because of what I did in my college. So when they graduated out and I said, I am trying to do something, do you want to be it? A lot of these guys came and joined, and I paid them nothing. Then we used to do a few college workshops to basically earn our livelihood. And whenever, so we used to travel like a gang to a college, stay there for 3 days, do the workshops, have fun, take that money, split between the team, all that part of it. So this is how it actually went on for some time. And the product is still not mature, right? So we haven't built anything on business side, and we are all from engineering. So though no one had any sales experience whatsoever initially. So these were all
Hmm.
big challenges. And then we knew we had to sell. When we had the product, we had to sell. We started going to schools, and schools had a lot of criteria. They wanted this, they wanted it only on Saturdays. So we had issues with respect to how do we do only on Saturdays and still make money. This evoluted. So if you look at it, it's around probably small incremental 1,000 steps till the time we came to know, okay, we have to run it more formally. And then I understood saying that, okay, we would struggle, but we would need a business guy to probably build the business part of it. And I had no experience. So I met someone, I met, in fact, multiple people, tried out a few. And then there was another person whom I met, a senior guy who has worked in corporate for a long time. So he joined us. And then that is where I saw what was working, what is not working, how he built the sales team, all that part of it. Now, I didn't agree to a lot of things which happened at that point of time, but I also learned a lot of things saying that, okay, this is how you bring in people. And then once he came into, we raised some funding, all that part of it. And that's how I know you also.
Hmm.
So if you look at it, I think that journey was a lot. I think if you ask me, fundamental thing, it's the capability of keep going. But what kept
Hmm.
me going was sheer passion. I think there was nothing else which I had with me when I actually started out the journey and built during the initial years. There was sheer passion and grit to keep moving. That's all.
Were there some milestones in the early years which made you realize that, you are on the right path and you're moving in the right direction?
If you ask me even today, I don't think I'm right. So,
Okay.
no, Tushar. I think if you search for milestones, I think you're looking at it wrong, because
Hmm.
what you have is a dream and you are just chasing it. Now, the path you take might not always be right, because you carve in a certain path, you meet. In fact, you don't see a path. You see what you call as dead ends most of the time. You dig, you don't find. You dig, you don't find. And sometimes when you start digging, it becomes slightly easier, and you think that is the right path, but may not be all the time. But those journeys of digging make you stronger. It helps you build capabilities. You know your team. You know your strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's a very important thing for an entrepreneur to know and explore during that journey. So I look at it from that perspective rather than signs and signals, which I actually saw. In fact, if I were to reflect back, I actually never took any decisions like that based on any signs.
Hmm. Can you take us through the middle years, let's say 2014-15, when you would have, had some direction in the business, some of the products would have been completed. What was that journey like,
So,
moving
Tushar,
from complete zero to the next step?
yeah. So in 2012-13, Tushar, we are basically struggling to what do you call as find out how is the business going to be. Yes, we built a basic prototype of a product and then we went ahead. And 2014 is when we understood that we need to make a business out of it. And we are still building. There was only one product. And when we went to schools, right, the product was rejected because the schools were not willing to give us their computers. And we had assumed that we need computers. And then the entire product was built keeping the computer at the centerpiece. And when we went
Hmm.
into schools is when we started understanding. The sales team came back and said that this was in 2014 and came and said, sir, a lot of principals are excited, but the problem is they don't have free computer science lab, which means we won't be able to do. They are asking if we could accommodate it in the regular classroom. And that is where I thought, okay, and why don't we do this with tabs? And we had to redo that entire effort which we had put and build it into tabs so that we could then the entire all the materials, everything, we made it in a box which the mentors would carry into one classroom and then into the
Hmm.
next, then into the next. So we made a portable innovation lab at the center of the point, and this took us some time. So 2014 we got quite decent traction. A lot of schools started paying us money, all that part of it. The business started actually taking off in 2014. So 2014, what we call, were there small experimental trials which we are doing randomly without really a business or a process background. 2014 is when we started seeing the process background, or the business part of it. And then 2015 we started seeing a lot of operational issues coming with schools. We had issues of cash flow coming out with schools. We had issues of burn with schools. All these are operational issues which we started understanding. So the first part of it, yes, there was excitement, there was product building. Second part of it, yes, we see the initial traction and all, which is exciting and good. Third part, we started seeing the practical realities of managing a B2B school business, where we saw the school promises us a certain thing, though things are there on the paper, there was nothing which was followed through. So it took a
Hmm.
lot of effort from our end to understand all that part of it. And I think those were the middle parts. So, and then we were grappling with a lot of cash flow issues at that particular point of time. We raised a bridge round also during this exact time because we are running out of cash. There
Hmm.
was some money coming in, but we were burning more than what we were making.
Okay. How did you deal with that? So, wasn't there the thought that maybe school segment was fine to begin with,
So,
but should I be exploring different channels now?
yeah, so at this particular point of time, I was basically managing operations and technology, and my other partner was managing all the business and finances. If you look at it, and I did some broad math, we used to have these regular discussions about how we need to carry it forward. And I also started, I thought I was becoming stagnant because I'm not an operational guy. I like to create, I am a good talker, but I also think I didn't do much on sales because I was always caught up in operations and firefighting. So, and there
Hmm.
was no product development during that middle part of the years at all, Tushar. So we did one product. We continued incremental development. It means one or two people were only being and maintaining the product, but there was no new product development which was happening per se during that middle part of the years. And
Hmm.
then, yes, we conceptualized a few things, but we didn't have the money or the budget to actually get in new people and then do it because we were burning, right? And we were in fundraising mode, bridge fundraising mode, all that part of it. So there was this
Hmm.
crisis somewhere in 2016 where I actually started seeing we are going to run out of cash unless we raise money, and we decided we could raise one more. This was basically a conflict which started happening between me and my partner. I kept saying at this rate we are going to die, but my partner was of the other vision, saying that no, we will somehow make it. Now I like the grid, but when I did the numbers, it didn't make sense. And when I looked at it, I think this is where we started going heavily into crisis somewhere in mid of 2016. And I think me and my partner had started having huge conflicts of how we wanted to run a company. I wanted to stay lean and going profitably, where he wanted to have a 1,000-member team and grow up. And even when the business plan, we were talking to a few VCs, and there was also difference of point of view where I did a set of meetings. If you look at it, we were pitching separately, but and I think the people also externally, when they started seeing us, there was a different vision of running the same company. And I think because of these differences, we had to split and said that okay, one of us would have to take a step back and run the company. And at the point of time, the mantle came over to me, and I had to take over with huge negative backlog and basically nothing. And I distinctly remember some of the investors also thought they had to write us off, so probably liquidate the company, all that part of it at that particular point of time. But I think a few of the investors also supported, saying that no, we need to give Sandeep a chance. And I think I am thankful for them for giving, because I could very distinctly see if I take a few actions, our cash flow would stabilize. That was number one. But number two was that I didn't still know how to cover up on the backlogs which I had, because we were negative 1.5 crores at that point of time, and it was a huge cash crunch. It was like terrible. And then I had to call up, we let go of the entire sales team. Maybe a couple of them we retained, but apart from that, that brought in some stability. But then we had to do some drastic changes. So in how things are structured, I started talking to the team, saying that you need to take salary cuts, all
So,
that.
Sandeep, when you were going through this financial crisis of sorts, right?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind? As in, were you not doubting that what is going to happen to Bbox? And have you sort of reached a stage where business would not be able to survive?
Tushar, this is a doubt which you always have as an entrepreneur. But I think one thing I have always, what do you call? I personally, I think I am built like that, saying that you give me a crisis, I will typically figure it out. And I've done this when I was like in school, in college. It's not like this is the first time. So I was not of, yes, we have these doubts, but I said that, okay, this is another challenge which life throws at me. So let's figure this out. So I communicated. So I didn't really think too much with respect to saying that, are we going to die? I said, we will give it a shot, because now I am doing this entire part of it. I will communicate it to the entire team, bring all of them together and see whether we could manage the crisis. This is one part of it, but I would also say luck played a role. So during that time when we're doing all this part of it, I think the government also started talking the exact same language which we were talking, and they were initiating the Atal Innovation Mission and saying that innovation was important, all that part of it. And I think we got lucky and then got out of the crisis pretty well.
Got it. I am thinking during that time, right, of the crisis, even before that and after that, the whole challenge of managing the team would have been really tough, right? Because if, let's say, the company is going through a crisis and that's so a startup, it's very easy for employees to, what do you say, lose faith in the company and the founder. So how did you handle the team through that whole period?
So, Tushar, I think I was very authentic in what I said. I said there is a crisis. I said this is why I had to take this decision. And I also communicated saying that people who do not believe in what we are doing are free to go. And quite a lot of people left. It is not like people didn't leave, but quite a few people stayed back. And I think some of them also saw the opportunity, saying that, see, whenever there is a crisis, there is two ways, right? There is an opportunity, but there is also the other side of it. I think people who quit the ship at that point of time, we let them be, and there was no negative feelings. And I told them it's absolutely okay, because I told them saying that, will I bring it back? I'm confident I'll bring it back, but I can't guarantee anything for anyone. And I think so keeping authentic communication to everyone was key. Where there were gossips, there were enough gossips, there were enough background story. But I think that's how things are. You do anything drastic, anything different, people are going to talk about you. I remember similar experiences when I was in college. When I came out with this first innovation when I was in third semester, right? That was the first time someone did something in computer science engineering with the hardware and all. And people really didn't believe me. They said that I'm a relative of this professor. So I have an older brother who's helping me out. They created all these gossips and people used to laugh at me. But when the second, the third, fourth innovation started coming, people said, no, no, Sandeep is like this. So I think I had an idea of how this is going to pan out. But yeah, of course, the scale is different. There's money involved, all that part of it. But I just trusted saying that, okay, give it time. People will see what the true intentions are.
Okay. So can you take us through what was the team size before the crisis, after the crisis?
Okay, so
And
it's
yeah.
so if you look at it, the team size now and then is quite the same, Tushar. Though we were doing not even 1/6 of the revenue, we had around 113 people to be exact. I think that's the number I distinctly remember. This was end of 2016, if I'm not wrong. And then we tapered and we came down to almost, I think, 45, 50. So half the team, and then we actually built it from there all the way back to 100, 115. So, but then our revenues actually multiplied by almost 5, 6 times with the same size of the team. So there was been a huge change with respect to how that happened during that particular point of time.
Got it. So you mentioned luck played a role for you to come out of that, what do you say, crisis really strong. But would you also say that there were certain decisions that you took which helped you, go through that crisis period and come out strong of that?
No, Tushar, definitely. See, I don't like giving all the credits to luck because luck is there. You just have to utilize it. There was an opportunity there. You have to utilize it, which means you have to take a lot of decisions which can be painful, but are required. So I think we did, like for example, letting go of some people, they were not letting go of the organization. They were creating a lot of politics internally. So we had to take some decisions in hard letting go of few people, not a lot of them, but at least a few of them. So I think these were important decisions which actually played a pivotal role. And I also communicated, like, for example, if we had kept taking the cash the way we had been taking before, we would not have survived. So I told a lot of people saying that we are not going to take cash for a certain period of time because that was very critical. And I didn't want to go raise another group, what do you call, another funding. And I didn't think that was possible even because we could have gone that way and saying that, okay, let's go raise another cash. But if anyone sees the crisis we are going through, I don't think people would have even given us 1 lakh. So I think those few decisions regarding team, letting go of people, asking, communicating to the employees of salary cuts, all that part of it were important at that particular point of time.
And Sandeep, would you say that the culture of the firm also plays a role in, let's say, going through tough times and getting out?
Tushar, culture is a conscious thing which you have to do, but honestly speaking, the initial part of the years, I thought it should be a vibrant team, all that part of it, but didn't consciously build and groom it up. So when you say, right, culture can be conscious, culture can be subconscious. It's like for me building or planning a city. You can plan a city or the city can happen on its own. If it happens on its own, then it doesn't happen the way you would want it to. So this was first initial 4, 5 years, I think there was no concentration. Me and my partner, we did what we thought was right. And I think even with respect to how we ran the team, I think me and him were very different in the way we looked at the company. So both, what do you call, culture remained in the company at that particular point of time. But post 2007, 17, after I took over, right, I think I was able to cohesively build the culture in a certain way. So I think that is the first time we even planned saying that, okay, we need to have this culture, all that part of it. But a lot of it has been, it's not like Tushar, I'm saying everything worked out. I think I also learned, but I think in the process of some 25, 30 experiments, which we did in the last 3, 4 years, I think played a major role in shaping up, okay, this is how I perceive culture in a company and how I would want to grow the culture inside the company. So it plays a role, but I think a lot has to do. Initially, it is the founders and the initial teams, what you call as beliefs, which becomes the culture. But as and when we start growing, I think the process, the conscious grooming, all that part of it also becomes part of the culture.
Got it. So Sandeep, now how is Buybox doing? Can you take us through what are the new things which you are doing? How have you done it during the COVID times?
COVID was tough to shut because we majorly deal with schools, right? And all the schools shut down and we are not really ready for it. But the nice part is we had a superb 2019-20. Of course, we did a lot of mistakes there, all that part of it. But having said that, we still had a financially good year. So we had some buffer, but we had to quickly figure out, and there was some trickling revenue of 2019-20, which was coming into the COVID time. So, but we had to quickly shape up. So then again, because I foresaw saying that this is going to be a problem for an year. So I think I didn't expect COVID to like, oh, okay, would be a 2 months thing. I expected COVID to be a 1.5 years thing. So I think last March 2020, I already told the team, be ready for a 1 year loss. And in that time, we have to rethink and revamp ourselves. So I think we managed decently, but I think we had to do a lot of drastic changes. And I got a lot of time personally to look through a lot of things. So what we are doing is we are building quite a lot of products we couldn't afford to do before. So from a company which was majorly service centric, I think the vision has started shifting a little bit, and we are trying to be a slightly different company than what we are. Of course, innovation is there at its core, but I think we have gotten into a phase where we understand ourselves, the company, the mistakes which we made. So I think the next decade which we are looking, I think we are trying to position VBox differently.
Got it. Sandeep, during COVID, I think there was a certain boom in education technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's too much noise. I mean, each and everyone is raising millions of dollars,
Correct,
right?
correct.
How do you deal with that? You being a business which has been running from 2012,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Going through a tough phase through which you came out. And then you see suddenly a lot of these young businesses raising in millions. Does that affect you as an entrepreneur?
I would be lying if I say it doesn't. Of course, because every day employees, my senior management, all of them keep coming, sir, wo kar rahe, ye kar rahe. Even our employees, the new joinees, they come, sir, they are doing. If you look at it, they don't even have the depth of what we have. We have so much of expertise, the kind of quality we deliver is so we are at least authentic. Why people don't see all this part of it? We should do what they are doing. We should also missell. All this started coming up. Now, one thing is that, see, when we went through this crisis, right, I think I also evolved as a person and my priorities in life started changing. I understood the valuation game at that point of time during, I think, 14, 15, 16. We were looking at valuation, that, this, and all. And after, I think, 2017, I consciously looked at saying that stay a profitable company and stay in control. I think that's a better way of running the company rather than trying to be in someone's mercy. Of course, things can be, if I'm not saying that model is bad, but I think if you have a certain mindset where you look at, okay, I want high growth or do a sixer or get out, if that's the kind of thinking, I think there is absolutely nothing wrong. But for me, consciously, I was very clear, I'm not going to build this company like that. So I said, for me, profitable bottom lines are going to be very, very important. And because then that will help me pivot the company whichever way I want. And it's not like I'm a control freak, but the thing is that it gives a certain liberty to shift gears when required or go at a slower pace when required and then ramp it up if required. If you take external funding, I know that is not going to happen. We have to toe a certain line. So consciously, some of them I used to communicate them. Some of them I said, let's see, let's wait it out. It's not like everything is going to come up or come down, and just because people raise money doesn't mean it is successful. So anyway, we had seen all that, right? And we had experience, so I was able to calmly take it up, not be in a bigger issue. But yes, it does affect when people, 20 of them, come and say, sir, we should do that, do this. But then yeah, it's a patience process of telling them that why you do what you do.
Got it. So Sandeep, in a way, you are a veteran entrepreneur, right? You started in 2012. You have gone through a whole journey, right? What do you think is the toughest part of entrepreneurship? Is it, for a business like yours, which is very product centric? Is it product innovation? Is it, selling this product? Has it been team building, fundraising? So what do you think is the toughest part of entrepreneurship?
Everything is tough. See, I think I don't know. For me, if you ask personally, I think it's been a mix of everything. Was team building tough? It was. See, for me, sales team initially was a blind spot. I thought we need to bring in seniors, and if we bring in seniors from corporates who had that experience, it would help. It was required, but for a short time of the company. But then I also figured out a lot of things in sales which didn't exist before, right? So I think sales was tough initially, but it was not tough later part of the journey. Okay. And then initially was it tough to attract people? From people perspective, I think initially, yes, it was difficult to attract good talents, I would say. attracting passionate people was possible. But please, we should also understand, see, passion alone is of no particular use. If you're very passionate but you're not capable or you don't have talents, it's as good as nothing, right? You're just been always saying, hey, I want to do, but yeah, I can't even lift my sword and fight. I think from that perspective we have evolved. So, but I think fundraising, was it tough? Honestly, the first fundraising wasn't that tough. I wouldn't say it was a huge struggle. It was it a learning experience? Yes, it was a learning experience. Product building, was it tough? I would say yes, I know building products, but having said that, bringing it to industrial standard, ironing out the bugs, because you still can't hire good people from the industry. We are still paying them peanuts. So how do you get quality output? On time delivery, all these were tough. So I think from product and even then later part of operations, initially we were gay everywhere, then streamlining the operation, so that was one part of the journey. So I think every part is tough to share from an entrepreneur's perspective when you look at it. But I think you'll have to start, what do you call, learn the process or get people in the process, and then get talents, tie them all together and keep going.
Got it. So, Sandeep, talking on softer bits of entrepreneurship, how do you rate the importance of having a support system as an entrepreneur? And what role has it played in your journey?
Tushar, support is very important. I think family has to first understand what is that you're doing. I had a tough time during the initial part of the years, especially with my mom, who never understood entrepreneurship and was thinking, she knew I was talented, she knew I could speak well, she knew I was quite famous in college, she could see all the professors visiting my house, me working, putting in a lot of hard work, but she really could not understand my passion. So during the initial part of it, she would always compare, hey, look at this company, look at that guy, he's getting placed, he's getting job, he's giving back money, what the heck are you even doing? So aren't you wasting your time, all that part of it. So I think it was tough initially, but over a period of time, I think they started seeing, and when they start seeing small success, you are able to win some competitions, you are getting published in local newspapers, some parents or other parents are talking about you, all that part of it, that definitely helps. And then when you raise money, oh, of course, so someone is giving him some money, so kuch to hoga, so he's making kuch some money, all that part of it. But I think family's stability is very important, which initially was tough for me. But what you do is that, yes, they keep cribbing about it, but you keep communicating. That's all you can do. That's one bit. The second bit for me, for me, I am not an extrovert person, Tushar. I am very introvert. I like being alone. I like my thinking time. I like to stay and meditate, all that part of it. So I think for me, the essence of hard decision making always has to see that I sit in a place and reflect about what decisions I am taking, what are the consequences, what are the positives, what are the negatives, and I always keep a check on my emotion. Like for example, today I decided, oh, I'm very emotional, I have to do this, but I don't really take the action today. So I just sit there night. If it takes 1 year, 1 hour, 2 hours, just sit there, just keep thinking about my feelings. And when I feel my feelings has subsided and started becoming neutral, is when I started taking decisions. And when too many confusions are there, then I call up people who has nothing to do with the problem, and then ask them, this is what is happening, what do you think I should do, what am I missing? So they give sometimes strange perspectives. I'm not saying all of this helps, but these are some things which I do to keep my mind sane or decide on whether I'm doing it right or wrong. And finally, what I also do is, I think Dr. Malpani has helped in quite a lot, saying that every problem which you face has been faced by someone in some form. So read about it. So I read about problems like that, or other entrepreneurs who have faced similar tough situations, or listen to podcasts or videos of others sharing how did they handle. And then I think that's how I basically cope up with all the toughness which comes out.
Sure. Sandeep, what does hustle mean for you? Sandeep, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it, Tushar. I'm thinking, what does hustle mean for me? I think hustle is just chasing your dreams for me. I think that's what is hustle.
Okay. So, Sandeep, we are entering into the last segment of our podcast. This is a rapid fire round. I'm going to shoot a one liner to you, and you have to let us know whatever first thought that comes to your mind.
Sure, Tushar.
Okay. So, Sandeep, the first one is pedigree or passion.
Passion always.
Profitability first or growth first?
I would say balance, but yeah, prefer always profitability.
Pybox in 2025?
A common name.
One thing you want to change about the startup ecosystem in India?
I think the focus on software should change. I think that's something the startup ecosystem is getting too much. I think because we have success there, I'm not saying we should not, but I think there should be conscious effort on startup ecosystem to look things beyond software. Of course, we are great at that. We will be great at that, but I think we should look beyond the software.
Great. One entrepreneur you idolize?
Sridhar Wembo,
Okay. One investor you follow?
Malpani.
Now, everyone on my podcast says the same
Yeah.
name.
What do we do?
An interesting white space you see Indian entrepreneurs should solve for?
Hardware startups, especially, I think we could start with the toy sector. I think it's a big white space. India has a lot of potential, I think, with respect to the population and the kids we have here. So I think, but we are hugely dependent on the Chinese market for that, but we could develop that competency fairly quickly. But yes, of course, we could make a lot of other products, but I think all that would require a platonic shift in thinking, getting lakhs of people trained. But at least one white space I think a few of us could concentrate on is the toy sector.
Got it. Sandeep, top three books you recommend to our audience?
I don't know. Maybe the Write It, I think, is one book I found it thing. I don't remember actually the names of quite of these books, but I think one book I would say is for guys who are planning on products is to read the Write It. It's been a
Okay.
good read for me.
Great. So, Sandeep, before leaving, one piece of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, especially for entrepreneurs who are working in hardware.
I think one generic tip I would like to give is listen to everyone, but follow your inner voice. I think this is something which I would give it to any entrepreneurs. For hardware entrepreneurs, I would say be patient. It's not going to be easy.
Got it. Very, very motivating. So, Sandeep, all right, on that note, we wrap our conversation today. I think it was great fun to have a chat with you and learn more about your inspiring entrepreneurial journey.
Thanks, Tushar. Thanks for the patient listening and giving me an opportunity to share at least whatever little I have learned through my years of entrepreneurship.
Sure, Sandeep. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's a wrap for today. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. We will be back in the next episode with yet another story. If you have any suggestions for us, please reach out to us at our social handles. Don't forget to tune in to The Hustle Code, presented to you by Team Dexter. At Dexter, we partner with passionate entrepreneurs and help them scale. Until next time, keep hustling.